Well, actually, I don't know that I choose to do it so much, but I just end up that way. Don't know. I don't know why. I've often wondered, but that started in school where they seemed to elect me to do things. I guess I'm probably interested in helping things do better. Yeah, I think I probably should have given credit to the Junior League to begin with, because that was a wonderful training ground that I started out, I suppose, in leadership positions, learning there. I guess it was probably the Community Council of the Capital Region, which was the planning arm of the United Way in those days, and I was part of that, and I became president, and I guess that's probably the first time I had an active role in a community organization. I grew up in West Hartford. I was born here and spent all my life in West Hartford. That was in the Depression, though, and so I don't think there was quite as much concentration on giving a lot if you didn't have it, obviously. It was more about doing things for people, and there was a lot of that in my family. And then my husband was a big influence. He really felt everybody should give back in return for all that they had received from various parts of the community. And he was very much a giver, and I think he was one of the biggest influences. Well, I'm still involved with the Hartford Foundation. Hate to have that end because it's a wonderful organization. And I have been active on some committees here at Doncaster. And I've tried not to do too much because I'm getting older. So I have continued membership in a lot of organizations, but not necessarily leadership. And I'm with the Connecticut Historical Society. I'm still part of the board of the Old State House Association. Jim English is the one who called me. It quite surprised me just to see if I would be interested in going on the board, and I hadn't even thought I would have that opportunity, and it was a wonderful one. So he was one of the influences, and many of the people who were on the board then. I was one of two women, and eventually I was one of just one in those days, and they were really very good to me, nice to me. Well, I knew about it because I had been part of some organizations, and I knew it was a wonderful funder. But like many people, I thought of it as some way off, high up, you know, not really anything I would ever be part of. So I was quite surprised and happy to be asked to join it. And it was always a wonderful organization. I think a lot of people know about it but think it's not something that will affect them. But it has affected almost every organization, I would say, in this region. Minority representation was one thing. It also worked both ways, because there were some North End groups that did not have anything like as much representation of people other than minorities on their board, and we thought it was important to have that kind of representation for lots of reasons, so there'd be greater understanding in the community. And I really found it a wonderful experience. You know a lot of what's going on in this region, and I think we had some insistence on the board being representative of the people served, and that was one of the things we had to be very careful about being sure, because some organizations had to restructure their board in order to make that possible. But that was one of the pushes we were making then, and that's the one I remember most. I do remember quite often saying, if we're going to approve this, we should put in a sentence saying it does not meet our requirements. But I don't think that's a problem anymore. At one point, I was the only woman on the board, and a few years before that, there probably weren't any. And that's a big difference, because there's a point of view that's not being heard at all or being considered. I shouldn't say that about men, but you know, everybody has their way of looking at things. And it was very interesting to be part of a group like that, where you really feel you can speak about a certain point of view that might not be heard otherwise. So I was happy to be included. Back then the foundation was a smaller organization, a lot less staff, and it was a very collegial group of people who met every month and in between at other meetings of committees. But it was still doing a great deal and had a wonderful reputation in the community, and that was really one of the good things to be a part of, because it earned you a lot of respect. Because we were in that little place out in West Hartford Center when I first started on it, and then we moved to Gillette Street, and that was also somewhat smaller, and certainly a much smaller staff. Now, of course, we have the big office downtown, which is not as easy for some people to get to, and probably a lot easier for others. But it's in the center of town, which is what they wanted. I serve on the Cultivation Committee, which is a wonderful committee and very inclusive of all kinds of people. A lot of younger people now, and that's good. And then the Brainerd Fund, which is a family fund that friends of mine were part of. Well, we do get reports on what has happened to the people that are served. It is a fairly specific, it was actually founded as a very specific kind of a fund for people who were not in poverty by any means, but had high medical expenses and needed some help. I think it's broadened somewhat since then, and yes, we do. We see some of the letters that are written of gratitude for people who've been helped. So it's a very personal kind of fund. They all are serving people who, I think the letters are really very moving, because they're so grateful for something that has made a huge difference in their life. They either would not have to lose their house. I mean, it's that poignant sometimes. But they're very personal letters, and we don't have the names that go with them, obviously. Well, I just think it's a wonderful organization as it is, and I do think that it's had leadership that has made it continue to grow and continue to chart new courses, and they're always in the forefront of things. And of course, that's one of the things they're apt to do. Instead of continuing support, they'd rather start something new that's needed. I just think it's a wonderful organization, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I'm glad to support it. I think that's it's the old dead hand thing, isn't it? I think that's the value of an organization like the Hartford Foundation, because if you restrict a fund and then the need is not a need after a while because of advances in healthcare or some changes in a city, the fund has to be used somehow, and it makes it difficult. So I think it's better to leave unrestricted money, or to give unrestricted money, and let the people who know what is needed make the decision. I haven't had any influence on what is done with the funds I've given, because I really think that the distribution committee and the staff are very good at that, and they know a lot more than I do about what's going on in the city and what is needed. I think anything that supports the city or the region, I'm interested in arts organization, but I don't specifically say what my funds should go. But I think the funds that I have given are part of the larger Hartford Foundation funding. I don't think they are specifically set aside. But I do get regular updates in the mail, for instance, about grants that have been made that are of interest, and of possibilities for giving extra. There's always the possibility that some of the decisions you make will not be accepted by the community at large, but you do the best you can with the information you have, and sometimes you have more information and understanding than the community itself does, and you have to consider the good, the greater good for the whole area. Well, I think it was offered to me by the foundation as a good way to do something in the future and still have income from some of your funds during your lifetime, and that sounded like a very good idea to me, and I still think it is. I think giving outright is also good, whichever is better for you. At the moment, I think it's important to leave a legacy, though, at some point. I didn't have any particular desire for that money. It's to go for whatever the foundation felt was important. I think that's the whole point of leaving things to the foundation, because they have a broad look at the community, and they can deal with changing times and changing interests, and it's much better than leaving money for a specific thing that then is not needed. I would say it's important to think very carefully about what you can do to protect the future, and that the Hartford Foundation is a wonderful way to do it, because it's able to adjust with the times and the changes in the community and in people and in needs. So I'm a great believer in a certain amount of your funds, though some can go to specific things in which you have an interest. The foundation is a great place to entrust your funds. Certainly there's been a change in the role of women at the foundation, a great change. I mean, that's the biggest change, not only on the board but on the staff, and I think that's good, of course, obviously. I guess I would say I'd like to be remembered as somebody who was concerned about the needs of the community and active in trying to make things better, and interested in all aspects of life in this area, and the support of the organizations that really need public support and private support. I think people who can do it have an obligation to be part of any of those organizations. I've enjoyed all my, I guess almost all my relationships with that kind of nonprofits. I think in terms of the foundation, I remember when I was asked to be on it, the person who asked me said, "It's a lot of fun, you'll just love it." And I thought, fun? I didn't know it would be fun, but it was wonderful to know so much about what was going on and to be able to make a difference in how things were going to proceed in a city. That's a rare opportunity, and I felt very fortunate and happy.